The massive doors of Lecture Hall 7 opened with a soft hiss. Students from across the galaxy filed in, their various forms creating a colorful parade of species. Blue-skinned Altarians walked alongside towering Korvaxi warriors. Small, quick Nexari darted between the legs of massive Centaurians. The air filled with dozens of different languages as translators worked overtime. Commander Vextar stood at the podium, adjusting his military uniform. His green-scaled hands moved smoothly over the control panel as holographic displays came to life around the circular amphitheater. The Galactic Security Institute's most famous instructor was about to begin his legendary course series. "Welcome, cadets, to Advanced Threat Assessment," Vextar announced, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's acoustic systems. The chatter died down immediately. "Today we begin our study of one of the galaxy's most interesting species from a security perspective." A three-dimensional image appeared above the stage. It showed a blue and green planet orbiting a yellow star. Earth looked peaceful from space, its white clouds swirling gently over green continents and blue oceans. "Humans," Vextar continued, "are classified as a Level 4 security concern. Not the highest threat level, but significant enough to warrant careful study." In the back row, Dr. So-Jin Park settled into her seat. She wore the standard gray uniform of an exchange student, her black hair tied back in a simple style. Her identification badge listed her as a xenobiology researcher from the outer colonies. Nothing about her appearance suggested anything unusual. The alien students around her leaned forward eagerly. Tales of human unpredictability had spread throughout the academy, though most considered them exaggerated stories. "Let us examine the standard indicators of human aggression," Vextar said as new images filled the air. Ancient battles played out in holographic detail. Humans with primitive weapons charged across fields. Later scenes showed more advanced conflicts with metal machines and energy weapons. "Notice the pattern," the instructor pointed out. "Humans display clear territorial behaviors. They fight over resources, land, and ideological differences. Their emotional responses are easily measured through biochemical changes." So-Jin watched quietly as her species' history played out before the class. The images were accurate but incomplete. They showed the obvious conflicts but missed the subtle strategies that made humans truly dangerous. A young Nexari student raised his hand. "Commander, the data suggests humans are straightforward in their approach to conflict. Is this correct?" "Excellent observation, Cadet Kethix," Vextar replied. "Humans tend to telegraph their intentions through body language, vocal stress patterns, and pheromone releases. This makes them relatively easy to predict and counter." So-Jin almost smiled at that. The instructor was teaching exactly what Earth's intelligence services wanted other species to believe. Every word reinforced the idea that humans were simple, emotional creatures who could not hide their true intentions. The lecture continued with detailed analysis of human behavior patterns. Vextar showed charts and graphs that mapped human responses to various stimuli. Everything was neat and orderly, reducing human complexity to simple formulas. "The key to detecting a dangerous human," Vextar explained, "lies in monitoring these 5 primary indicators." The display showed a checklist that included elevated heart rate, increased body temperature, aggressive posturing, vocal changes, and chemical signatures. Any human experiencing combat stress or planning hostile action will display at least 3 of these markers. He continued confidently, "Our detection systems are 96% accurate in identifying potential human threats." A Centaurian student with 4 arms raised 2 of them. "What about humans who attempt to disguise these responses?" "An interesting question," Vextar replied. "However, human biology works against them in this regard. Their autonomic nervous system cannot be fully controlled. Even the most trained human operative will leak, tells that our sensors can detect." So Jin kept her breathing steady and her expression neutral. Around her, students took notes on their various recording devices. They were learning to see humans as a puzzle that had already been solved. The instructor moved to the next section of his presentation. "Let us examine documented cases of human infiltration attempts," he said. New images appeared showing humans trying to blend in with alien populations. "Notice how poorly they perform at mimicking other species' behavior," Vextar pointed out. "Their movement patterns, social interactions, and emotional responses consistently betray their true nature." Every example he showed featured humans who had been caught relatively quickly. The successful infiltrations were not mentioned because So-Jin suspected The instructors did not know about them. A soft chime indicated the lecture was halfway complete. Students shifted in their seats, some taking short breaks while others compared notes. Sojin remained still, absorbing every detail of what the galaxy's security forces believed about her species. "Now we turn to human technology," Vextar said as weapon schematics filled the air. "Humans prefer direct approaches to warfare. Their weapons are powerful, but lack sophistication compared to most galactic standards." The analysis focused on human military equipment from decades past. Nothing current was shown, which told Sojin that Earth's newer developments remained secret. That was encouraging for the mission. "Human tactics follow predictable patterns," the instructor continued. "They favor numerical superiority and overwhelming force. Subtlety is not typically a human strength." Sojin thought about the 17 human operatives currently working throughout the facility. Some had been in place for over a year, slowly building trust and gaining access to sensitive areas. The irony was almost overwhelming. A Korvaxi warrior in the middle section stood up. His massive frame cast shadows across nearby students. "Commander, what if humans change their approach? What if they learn to hide these indicators you describe?" Vextar paused, considering the question carefully. "An excellent point, Cadet Thekmore. However, changing fundamental behavioral patterns requires generations of evolution or extensive genetic modification. Humans lack both the time and technology for such changes. Additionally," he continued, "human psychology works against them. They are emotional creatures who struggle with long-term deception. Their need for social connection and validation makes them vulnerable to psychological profiling." The word stung, even though Sojin knew they were meant to be academic rather than insulting. She had been away from Earth for 8 months now, maintaining her cover identity while slowly working her way deeper into the Institute's structure. As the lecture neared its end, Vextar summarized the key points. "Remember, cadets, humans are dangerous when they choose to be obvious about it. They excel at direct confrontation and emotional manipulation, but they struggle with patience, subtlety, and long-term planning." Students around the hall nodded, filing the information away in their minds. They would graduate believing they understood humanity's capabilities and limitations. "Your assignment for next session," Vextar announced, "is to review the case studies in your data packets. We will analyze 3 separate human infiltration attempts and identify the mistakes that led to their discovery." As students began gathering their materials, Sojin remained seated. She watched the holographic displays fade away and listened to the chatter of alien voices discussing what they had learned. When the hall was nearly empty, she finally stood and walked toward the exit. Her movement was unhurried and natural, displaying none of the tells that Vextar had described as inevitable human characteristics. Tomorrow's lecture would cover advanced detection, techniques for human operatives. Sojin was looking forward to it. The irony was perfect. The galaxy's premier security academy was teaching courses on how to detect dangerous humans, while a human operative sat in their classroom, took notes, and planned her next move, and they had no idea she was there. The second lecture began exactly on time. Commander Vextar stood behind his podium, with the confidence of someone who had given this presentation hundreds of times. The holographic displays showed detailed charts about human behavioral patterns and psychological profiles. "Today we examine the practical application of human threat detection," he announced to the packed auditorium. "By the end of this session, you will understand how to identify a human operative in any social setting." Students from dozens of species filled their usual seats. Notebooks and recording devices were ready. Everyone expected another routine lecture about predictable human responses and obvious warning signs. Sojin Park sat in her regular spot near the back. Her plain gray uniform and quiet demeanor had made her nearly invisible among the more distinctive alien students. She had attended every class for 2 weeks without drawing attention. "The primary weakness of human deception," Vextar continued, "is their inability to suppress unconscious reactions. Even when they believe they are acting naturally, their bodies betray them through micro-expressions and chemical signatures." A new hologram appeared showing a human face in extreme detail. Tiny muscle movements were highlighted and analyzed. The display claimed to show how human emotions leaked through even the most controlled expressions. "Notice the tightening around the eyes when stress increases," the instructor pointed out. "Humans cannot prevent this response, It happens automatically when they feel threatened or need to lie. So Jin kept her face perfectly relaxed. Years of training had taught her to control not just her major expressions, but also the tiny muscle movements that most people never noticed. She wondered if the instructor would be surprised to learn that some humans could indeed suppress these reactions. "Are there any questions about these detection methods?" Vextar asked, scanning the audience with confidence. Silence filled the hall for a moment. Then a small hand rose slowly from the back section. "Yes," Vextar said, squinting to see who had raised their hand. "Dr. Park, isn't it?" So Jin stood up. Her voice carried clearly through the acoustic systems. "Commander, I have a question about your detection protocols." "Please proceed," he replied, though something in his tone suggested mild surprise that the quiet exchange student was speaking up. "You mentioned that humans cannot hide their stress responses," Sojin said calmly. "But what if a human has already adapted to your detection methods? What if they know exactly what you are looking for?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Several students turned to look at her with new interest. The quiet researcher had asked something that cut straight to the heart of the instructor's assumptions. Vextar hesitated for just a moment. "Well, that would require the human to have detailed knowledge of our security procedures. Such information is highly classified. But hypothetically," so Jin pressed on, "if a human did possess such knowledge, wouldn't that make your detection methods useless?" Murmurs rippled through the audience. A blue-skinned Altarian student whispered to his partner, "She has a good point. How would we know if our methods were being countered?" The instructor cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the discussion. "Your concern is noted, Dr. Park. However, humans lack the patience for long-term intelligence gathering. Their emotional nature drives them toward quick action rather than careful planning." Sojin tilted her head slightly. "Is that assumption based on recent data or older observations?" The simple question made Vextar pause again. His confidence was starting to show small cracks. "Our intelligence on human capabilities is regularly updated through multiple sources." "I see," Sojin said. "And these sources have confirmed that human psychology has not evolved or adapted over the past several decades." More whispers spread through the hall. Students were beginning to realize that their instructor was struggling to answer what should have been simple questions. The quiet exchange student was revealing holes in their supposedly comprehensive understanding. A Korvaxi warrior raised one of his massive hands. "Dr. Park raises important concerns. If humans can adapt to our detection methods, how do we stay ahead of them?" Vextar's scales showed a slight color change that indicated stress. "The fundamental principles of human biology remain constant. Their autonomic nervous system still functions the same way it has for thousands of years." Sojin nodded as if accepting this answer. Then she asked, "But what about humans who have been trained specifically to control those autonomic responses? Military specialists, perhaps, or intelligence operatives?" The instructor's discomfort was becoming more obvious. Such training would require extensive resources and many years of development. Very few humans would have access to such programs. "How many would you estimate?" Sojin asked innocently. "Perhaps a few thousand across their entire population," Vextar replied, though his voice lacked its earlier certainty. Sojin appeared to consider this number carefully. And if even one of those trained individuals managed to infiltrate a secure facility, current detection protocols might miss them entirely. The question hit like a precision weapon. Students throughout the hall began looking around nervously. If their detection methods could be fooled, how would they know whether dangerous humans were already among them? A young Nixari cadet spoke up from the middle section. "Commander, are you saying we might not be able to detect the most dangerous humans?" Vextar's color change intensified. "No, that is not what I am saying. Our methods are highly effective against all human operatives, but Dr. Park just demonstrated logical flaws in those methods," pointed out a Centaurian student with 4 arms. "If she can identify these weaknesses, couldn't humans exploit them?" The instructor looked directly at Sojin. Something in his expression suggested suspicion was beginning to form. "Dr. Park, you seem unusually knowledgeable about human intelligence capabilities. Might I ask what specific research led to these insights?" Sojin met his gaze without flinching. "I study xenobiology, Commander. Understanding how different species adapt to challenges is essential to my work. And your research has included human adaptation to security measures?" "Human adaptability is well documented across many fields," she replied smoothly. They have shown remarkable flexibility when faced with changing circumstances. The answer was technically accurate while revealing nothing specific. Vextar seemed to realize he was being skillfully deflected, but could not pinpoint exactly how. A soft chime indicated the lecture period was ending. Students began gathering their materials, but the usual post-class chatter was subdued. Too many questions had been raised without satisfactory answers. For next session, Vextar announced, please review chapters 12 through 15 in your security manual. We will discuss practical exercises in human threat identification. As students filed out, many cast curious glances at Sojin. The quiet exchange student had somehow dominated the entire discussion without appearing confrontational or disrespectful. Sojin packed her materials slowly, watching as groups of students clustered in the hallways outside. She could hear fragments of their conversations. Do you think our detection methods really work? What if there are human spies we cannot identify? How would we even know if we were compromised? The seeds of doubt had been planted perfectly. Students who had arrived confident in their training were now questioning everything they had been taught. More importantly, they were asking the right questions. Vextar remained at his podium, staring at the spot where Sojin had been sitting. For the first time in years, his famous lecture series had been challenged by logic he could not easily dismiss. As Sojin walked toward the exit, she allowed herself a small smile. Phase 2 of her mission was proceeding exactly as planned. The galaxy's premier security academy was about to learn that their assumptions about human capabilities were dangerously outdated. The most effective weapon was not force or deception. It was simply asking the right questions at the right time. 3 days had passed since Sojin's questions had shaken the confidence of Lecture Hall 7. Word had spread throughout the academy about the exchange student who had challenged Commander Vextar's famous presentation. Students whispered in corridors about detection methods and human adaptability. Vextar stood before his class with renewed determination. Today would be different. Today would prove that his methods worked perfectly in practical situations. Welcome to our first hands-on exercise, he announced as students took their seats. Today you will apply everything you have learned about human threat detection. The holographic displays showed a three-dimensional layout of a space station. Corridors, rooms, and maintenance areas were marked in different colors. Red dots indicated sensor locations throughout the facility. The scenario is simple, Vextar continued. One human operative has infiltrated Research Station Alpha. Your task is to identify and locate this individual using our established protocols. Excited murmurs filled the auditorium. Students had been eager to test their theoretical knowledge in a practical setting. This was their chance to prove they could spot a dangerous human. Sojin watched from her usual seat as the instructor explained the exercise rules. Teams of 4 would analyze sensor data, behavioral patterns, and security footage to track down the simulated human infiltrator. Remember, Vextar emphasized, look for the 5 primary indicators we discussed. Elevated stress responses, unusual movement patterns, social interaction anomalies, chemical signature variations, and micro-expression inconsistencies. Dr. Sojin raised her hand. Commander, would you like me to assist with monitoring the exercise? I have experience with data analysis systems. Vextar paused, considering the offer. The exchange student had proven knowledgeable, even if her questions had been uncomfortable. Extra help with the technical aspects would be useful. That would be appreciated, Dr. Park, he replied. Please join me at the monitoring station. Sojin made her way down to the front of the hall where multiple screens displayed real-time data from the simulation. Students had already begun forming teams and accessing the sensor networks. The exercise began with enthusiasm. Teams spread throughout the facility, using handheld scanners to check chemical signatures in different areas. They monitored security cameras for suspicious behavior and analyzed voice patterns from communication logs. Sojin stood beside Vextar, watching the data streams flow across the displays. Her role was officially to help organize information and spot technical problems. Unofficially, she was learning exactly how the Academy's detection systems worked. Team 3 has identified elevated stress hormones in Corridor B7, she reported to Vextar. Should we highlight that area for closer examination? Excellent catch, the instructor replied, marking the location on the main display. Class, notice how Dr. Park identified a potential lead from the chemical analysis data. As teams continued their search, So-Jin provided helpful observations. She pointed out patterns in the data that students had missed. She suggested new search parameters that might reveal additional clues. Her contributions were so valuable that Vextar began asking for her opinion on various aspects of the exercise. What the instructor did not realize was that every suggestion So-Jin made was carefully designed to teach the students to look for the wrong things, Commander, she said quietly. The teams are focusing heavily on biochemical indicators. But what if the human operative has medical training? Someone with surgical experience might be able to control their stress responses better. Vextar nodded thoughtfully. A valid point. Class, remember that some humans may have enhanced self-control due to professional training. The comment caused several teams to adjust their search parameters. They began looking for signs of medical knowledge or surgical precision. So-Jin watched as they moved further away from detection methods that might actually work. Also, she continued, the movement pattern analysis assumes the operative is trying to avoid attention. But what if they are deliberately trying to be noticed in some areas to draw attention away from others? This suggestion sparked intense discussion among the teams. They began second-guessing their initial findings and searching for reverse psychology tactics that did not exist in the simulation. 2 hours into the exercise, most teams were thoroughly confused. The simple task of finding one human infiltrator had become a complex puzzle, with too many variables to track. A Centaurian student with 4 arms approached the monitoring station. Commander, we have identified 17 potential suspects, but the data is contradictory. How do we narrow down the possibilities? Vextar looked at the screens showing dozens of highlighted areas and conflicting analysis results. His confidence was starting to waver again. Dr. Park, he said, what would you suggest in this situation? So-Jin studied the displays with apparent concentration. The problem might be that we are looking for obvious indicators. Real human operatives probably know to avoid the standard warning signs. So how do we detect them? Asked a young Nexari cadet who had been listening. That is the fundamental challenge, So-Jin replied. If a human knows exactly what you are looking for, they can avoid displaying those behaviors. The most dangerous operatives would be the ones who appear completely normal. Silence fell over the monitoring station as the implications sank in. If the best human spies could avoid all detection methods, how would anyone ever find them? But surely there must be some way to identify them, Vextar insisted. So-Jin appeared to think carefully before responding. Perhaps the key is not looking for what they do, but what they do not do. Things that seem too perfect, too natural, too unremarkable. The suggestion sent teams scrambling to reanalyze their data from a completely different perspective. Now they were searching for people who seemed too ordinary, which made almost everyone appear suspicious. As the exercise approached its time limit, frustration was visible throughout the hall. Teams had generated hundreds of possible leads but could not definitively identify the simulated human operative. Time remaining, 10 minutes, Vextar announced. Team 7, composed of experienced military cadets, approached the monitoring station with grim expressions. Commander, we have a serious concern. What kind of concern? He asked. The team leader, a battle-scarred Korvaxi warrior, gestured toward the data displays. What if the human operative is not hiding among the station personnel at all? What if they have infiltrated the exercise itself? The question hit like a cold shock. Vextar felt his scales change color as the possibility registered. If a human could infiltrate the academy, they could certainly be part of the monitoring team. His eyes slowly turned toward So-Jin, who continued watching the data screens with professional interest. She had been helpful throughout the exercise. Her suggestions had been intelligent and insightful. She had enhanced the educational value of the demonstration, but now he wondered whether her contributions had been too helpful, too perfectly designed to confuse rather than clarify. Dr. Park, he said carefully, you have been remarkably knowledgeable about human infiltration tactics, almost as if you had personal experience with such operations. So-Jin looked up from the displays. For just a moment, something shifted in her expression. The mask of academic curiosity slipped slightly, revealing something harder underneath. Commander, she said calmly, I think this exercise has taught everyone a very important lesson. Which is? that your detection methods work perfectly against humans who want to be caught. The words carried an edge that had not been there before. Around the monitoring station, students and instructors began to realize that something fundamental had changed in the conversation. But what about humans who do not want to be caught? Sojin continued. What about operatives who study your methods as carefully as you study theirs? Vexter stared at her as pieces began falling into place. The perfectly timed questions, the helpful suggestions that led nowhere, the uncanny knowledge of human capabilities. Exercise terminated, he announced to the hall. All students return to your seats immediately. As confused cadets filed back to their places, Vextar kept his eyes fixed on the small human woman beside him. She no longer seemed like a harmless exchange student. Dr. Park, he said quietly, I think we need to have a different kind of conversation. Sojin smiled. For the first time since arriving at the academy, it was not the polite expression of an academic researcher. I think you are absolutely right, Commander. The emergency security meeting took place in Conference Room Alpha, the most secure location in the Galactic Security Institute. Vextar sat at the head of a polished metal table, his green scales showing stress patterns that he could no longer hide. Around him, senior faculty members spoke in hushed voices about the day's disturbing events. Sojin Park had been escorted to the room by 4 armed guards, though she had offered no resistance. She sat calmly in a chair designed for human proportions, her hands folded in her lap. Nothing about her posture suggested fear or concern. Dr. Park, Vextar began, your identification documents list you as a xenobiology researcher from the Outer Rim colonies. However, your knowledge of human military tactics suggests otherwise. My credentials are completely authentic, Sojin replied smoothly. You are welcome to verify them through any official channels. Dean Korthva, a massive centaurian with silver fur, leaned forward. We have been attempting to contact your listed institution for the past hour. The communication delays to the Outer Rim make immediate verification impossible. I understand your concern, Sojin said. However, I fail to see why asking reasonable questions during a lecture constitutes suspicious behavior. Before anyone could respond, a holographic communicator activated at the center of the table. The image that appeared showed another human, this one wearing what looked like a military uniform. Commander Vexitar, the figure said. I am Senior Analyst Jamin Ko, calling from Research Station Omega in the Kepler sector. Vexitar straightened in surprise. Analyst Ko, this is unexpected. How did you access our secure communication system? I have been monitoring your lecture series on human threat assessment, Jamin continued. There are some troubling aspects to your course material that require immediate discussion. The faculty members exchanged worried glances. Having an outside analyst break into their most secure conference room was not a good sign for their security protocols. What kind of troubling aspects? Vextar asked. Jamin's image became clearer as the connection stabilized. Commander, the level of detail in your human behavioral analysis is remarkably accurate. Too accurate, in fact. I do not understand. The psychological profiles, tactical preferences, and biological responses you have been teaching. This information could only come from someone with intimate access to human military operations. A chill settled over the conference room. The implications were becoming clear, even if no one wanted to acknowledge them yet. Furthermore, Jamin continued, I have been analyzing the questions asked during your recent lectures. The individual who challenged your methods demonstrated knowledge that goes far beyond academic research. All eyes turned to Sojin. She remained perfectly still, watching the holographic display with apparent interest. Analyst Ko, Dean Korthva interrupted. Are you suggesting that our guest lecturer has been providing classified information? No, Jamin replied. I am suggesting that your guest lecturer is classified information. The words hung in the air like a challenge to everything they thought they knew. Vexter felt his world shifting as pieces began falling into place. Dr. Park, he said slowly, would you care to explain how a xenobiology researcher knows classified details about human special operations? Sojin looked around the table at the assembled faculty members. For weeks she had maintained her cover identity with perfect precision, but now the moment of truth had arrived. Commander, she said, what do you know about Earth's Special Operations Division? I know it exists, Vextar replied carefully. Intelligence reports suggest they have several thousand operatives across the galaxy. And how many of those operatives do you think have infiltrated galactic security institutions? The question made everyone in the room uncomfortable. The possibility of human spies in their most sensitive facilities was not something they had seriously considered. Senior Instructor Velthar, a purple-skinned Nexari, spoke for the first time. Dr. Park, you seem to be implying that human intelligence capabilities are more extensive than our assessments indicate. Your assessments are based on humans you have caught, Sojin replied. But what about the ones you have not caught? Jamin's holographic image smiled slightly. Commander, I think it is time for complete honesty. The woman sitting in your conference room is Lieutenant Colonel Sojin Park of the Earth Defense Corps Intelligence Division. Security alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Guards rushed toward the conference room as blast doors sealed automatically. The Academy's most secure location had just become a potential trap. Furthermore, Jamin continued, she is not alone. New holographic images appeared around the table. Each one showed a human face with military identification details. The names and ranks scrolled past like an endless list. 17 human operatives have been working in your facility for the past 8 months, Jamin announced. They include maintenance staff, security personnel, kitchen workers, and even faculty members. Vextar stood abruptly, his chair sliding backward. That is impossible. Our screening procedures would have detected human infiltrators. Your screening procedures detected humans who were trying to appear non-human, Sojin said calmly. But what about humans who were trying to appear exactly like what they actually were? The logic was simple but devastating. The Academy's security was designed to catch people pretending to be something else, not people who were hiding in plain sight. Dr. Hairin Nam, Jamin continued, has been serving as your head of cybersecurity for 6 months. Captain Min Ho Yoon has been leading your physical security division. Sergeant Yuna Lee has been preparing meals in your cafeteria. With each name, faculty members realized they had been working alongside human operatives without suspicion. People they trusted, consulted with, and considered friends were members of Earth's military intelligence network. Why? Dean Korthova asked. What is the purpose of this infiltration? Sojin finally allowed her true personality to surface. The academic mask fell away, replaced by the confident bearing of a military officer. Because, Dean, your institution teaches the galaxy how to fight humans, and we wanted to know what you were teaching. You could have simply requested the information through diplomatic channels, Velthar pointed out. Could we? Sojin asked. Would you have shared classified threat assessment protocols with the species you were assessing? The question highlighted the fundamental problem. The Galactic Security Institute existed to study potential threats, including humanity. Sharing their methods with humans would defeat the entire purpose. But your presence here has contaminated our research, Vextar protested. The data we have gathered may be completely invalid. On the contrary, Sojin replied, your research has been remarkably valuable. Just not in the way you intended. She gestured toward the holographic displays still showing human faces and service records. For 8 months, 17 human operatives have been living and working in your most secure facility. They have accessed classified information, participated in threat assessments, and integrated completely into your community. The implications were staggering. If humans could infiltrate the galaxy's premier security academy, they could infiltrate anywhere. And none of your advanced detection methods identified a single one of us. Sojin continued. Your sensors, your behavioral analysis protocols, your psychological profiling systems, they all failed completely. Silence fell over the conference room as the truth sank in. The galaxy's experts on human threat detection had been completely blind to an extensive human intelligence operation happening under their noses. The most important lesson, Sojin said, standing for the first time since entering the room, is that everything you think you know about human capabilities is based on the humans you have caught. But the humans you have not caught are the ones you should be worried about. Jamin's holographic image nodded approvingly. Phase 1 of Operation Whisper is now complete. The Galactic Council has requested an emergency session to discuss new security protocols. As if on cue, communication alerts began flashing throughout the room. Messages were arriving from across the galaxy as news of the infiltration spread through official channels. Vextar slumped back into his chair. overwhelmed by the scale of the deception. His famous course on detecting human threats had become a demonstration of how completely such threats could be missed. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. Sojin smiled, but it was not unkind. "Now, Commander, we have a conversation about cooperation instead of detection." The main lecture hall had never been so quiet. Over 300 students from dozens of species sat in stunned silence as the truth unfolded before them. What had started as a routine lesson on human threat detection had become something none of them could have imagined. Commander Vextar stood at his podium, but his usual confidence had completely disappeared. His green scale showed stress patterns that everyone could see. Beside him, Lieutenant Colonel Sojin Park no longer bothered to maintain her academic disguise. "Students of the Galactic Security Institute," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's acoustic systems. "For the past 3 weeks you have been learning how to detect dangerous humans. Today you will learn why that approach is fundamentally flawed." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Students who had taken careful notes on human behavioral patterns now wondered if everything they had learned was worthless. Sojin activated the holographic displays. Instead of theoretical charts about human psychology, new images appeared. Security footage from throughout the academy showed familiar faces going about their daily routines. "Dr. Hirin Nam," Sojin announced as a hologram highlighted a woman walking through the computer center. "For 6 months she has been your head of cybersecurity. She upgraded your detection systems, improved your communication networks, and had access to every classified database in this facility." Students recognized the friendly technician who had helped them with computer problems and system access issues. She had been a trusted member of the staff. She is also Major Nam of Earth's Cyber Warfare Division. The revelation sent shockwaves through the audience. The woman who had been protecting their computer systems was actually a human intelligence operative, Captain Min Ho Yoon. Sojin continued as another familiar face appeared in the holographic display. "Your physical security director, the man responsible for protecting this facility from infiltration and espionage." Everyone knew Captain Yoon. He had given lectures on perimeter defense and conducted security drills. Students had respected his expertise and dedication to keeping them safe. "He is actually Captain Yoon of the Earth Defense Corps Special Operations Command." A Corvaxi student stood up abruptly. "That is impossible." Captain Yoon passed all security screenings. His background was thoroughly investigated. "His background is completely authentic," Sojin replied. "Captain Min Ho Yoon really did serve in various security roles throughout the galaxy. What your investigators did not discover is that he was working for Earth intelligence the entire time. The concept was brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of creating false identities, Earth had placed operatives in real positions where they could build genuine credentials and work history. Sergeant Yuna Lee," Sojin continued, showing footage of the Academy's popular cafeteria manager. "She has prepared thousands of meals, organized social events, and provided counseling support to homesick students." Many cadets had fond memories of Sergeant Lee's kindness and excellent cooking. She had become a beloved figure in the Academy community. She is also Staff Sergeant Lee of Earth's Psychological Operations Unit. Every conversation, every gesture of support, every friendly interaction has been part of a comprehensive intelligence gathering operation. The audience began looking around nervously. If these trusted figures were human operatives, who else might be hiding among them? "But the most important lesson," Sojin said, "is not about who we are. It is about what we represent." She gestured toward the still active holographic displays showing Academy personnel going about their normal duties. "For 8 months, 17 human operatives have been living and working in your most secure facility. We have attended your classes, participated in your exercises, and contributed to your research." The weight of the infiltration was becoming clear to everyone in the hall. This was not a simple espionage operation, but a complete penetration of their security systems. "Your detection protocols failed because they were designed to identify humans who were trying to hide their humanity," Sojin continued. "But we were not hiding our humanity. We were hiding our true purpose." A young Nexari cadet raised her hand tentatively. "Colonel Park, why are you revealing this operation now? You could have remained hidden indefinitely." Sojin smiled at the intelligent question. "Because, cadet, the galaxy faces threats that make your concerns about human infiltration seem trivial." New holographic images replaced the Academy footage. These showed dark space, distant galaxy sectors, and sensor readings that made everyone uncomfortable. The Void Swarm has begun moving through the outer spiral arms, Sojin announced. Our deep space monitoring stations detected their scout elements 3 months ago. Fear rippled through the audience. The Void Swarm was a nightmare from ancient galactic history, a force that consumed entire star systems and left nothing behind. The Machine Collective has ended its 1,000-year dormancy period, she continued. Our intelligence indicates they are constructing new battle units and preparing for expansion. More disturbing images appeared showing massive automated factories and endless production lines of war, machines, and the deep hunters are stirring. In dark space beyond the galactic rim, something has awakened them from their long sleep. The final images showed sensor ghosts and gravitational anomalies that suggested the movement of creatures too large to fully comprehend. Humanity did not infiltrate this academy to gather intelligence for conquest, Sojin said firmly. We came here to understand how the galaxy prepares for war. Because war is coming whether we want it or not. Silence fell over the hall as students processed the magnitude of what they were hearing. The universe suddenly seemed much more dangerous than their classroom exercises had suggested. But why the deception? Asked Dean Korthova from his position near the stage. Why not approach us directly with this information? Because, Sojin replied, the galaxy sees humanity as a potential threat to be managed, not as a potential ally to be trusted. Your own curriculum proves this. She gestured toward the displays that had shown human conflict footage during earlier lectures. Every species in this room has been taught to watch for signs of human aggression. You have been trained to contain and counter human expansion. None of you have been taught to work with humans. The accusation was uncomfortable but accurate. The Galactic Security Institute existed primarily to protect other species from each other, including humanity. What are you proposing? Vextar asked quietly. Integration, Sojin replied. Not detection but cooperation. Not containment but collaboration. Captain Minho's voice suddenly echoed through the facility's communication system. Colonel Park, we have received priority communication from Earth Command. Proceed, Captain. The Galactic Council has authorized formal alliance discussions. They are requesting immediate consultation on threat assessment protocols for the incoming dangers. Sojin nodded to the audience. The choice before you is simple. You can continue trying to detect and counter human capabilities, or you can learn to direct those capabilities toward common enemies. Dr. Hairin Nam appeared at the back of the lecture hall, no longer disguising her role as a military officer. Our cyber warfare specialists have been tracking Void Swarm communication patterns for months. We are prepared to share our findings with allied forces. Sergeant Yuna Lee entered from a side door, her friendly cafeteria manager persona replaced by the bearing of a psychological operations expert. Our infiltration techniques could be invaluable for gathering intelligence on machine collective installations. One by one, other human operatives revealed themselves throughout the hall. They had been students, instructors, maintenance workers, and security personnel. Each had been hiding in plain sight, while contributing to the Academy's daily operations. The galaxy is about to face its greatest challenge in recorded history, Sojin announced to the stunned audience. The question is not whether you can detect humans who are trying to deceive you. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the silent hall. The question is whether you want humans fighting beside you, or wondering what we might do next. As if summoned by her words, communication alerts began flashing throughout the facility. Emergency messages were arriving from across the galaxy, as deep space sensors confirmed the approaching threats. The age of peaceful coexistence was ending. The age of alliance or extinction was about to begin. 6 weeks had passed since the revelation that shook the Galactic Security Institute. The academy that had once taught courses on detecting human threats was now the center of an unprecedented alliance between dozens of species. Commander, Vextar walked through corridors that looked familiar, but felt completely different. Where alien students had once studied alone, now mixed groups of humans and non-humans worked together on joint projects. The sound of multiple languages and translation devices filled spaces that had been quiet before. He found Lieutenant Colonel Sojin Park in what had been Conference Room Alpha. The secure meeting space had been converted into a coordination center for the new Integrated Defense Initiative. Holographic displays showed star maps, threat assessments, and resource allocations across multiple galaxy sectors. Colonel Park, he said, approaching her workstation. Sojin looked up from a complex tactical display showing void swarm movement patterns. Commander Vextar, how are the new training protocols working out? Better than I expected, he admitted. Though I must confess, teaching joint operations is much more challenging than teaching threat detection. Sojin smiled. Different skill set entirely. Instead of looking for weaknesses to exploit, you have to find strengths to combine. Around the room, other figures worked at similar stations. Captain Minho Yoon coordinated with Korvaxi military planners on defensive positions. Dr. Hai-Rin Nam shared cybersecurity data with Centaurian computer specialists. Former enemies had become collaborators almost overnight. I have been thinking about your question from that first lecture, Vextar continued. You asked what would happen if a human had already infiltrated our briefing. I thought it was theoretical. It was not, Sojin replied simply. I had been attending your classes for 2 weeks before asking that question. The admission still made Vextar uncomfortable. His entire worldview had been built around the idea that threats could be identified and countered. Learning that the greatest threat had been sitting in his classroom taking notes was a humbling experience. Why did you not simply reveal yourselves immediately? He asked. Why maintain the deception for so long? Sojin paused her work and turned to face him directly. Because, Commander, trust cannot be demanded. It has to be earned. And it has to be earned slowly. She gestured toward a display showing Academy personnel working alongside human operatives on various projects. If we had arrived and announced that we were here to help, would you have believed us? Vextar considered the question honestly. Probably not. If we had claimed that our infiltration was for your own protection, would you have trusted that explanation? Definitely not. But now that you have worked beside us for weeks, seen our capabilities in action, and watched us contribute to your security rather than threaten it. Now I understand the difference, Vextar finished. You were not trying to prove you were dangerous. You were trying to prove you were useful. A communication alert interrupted their conversation. Captain Minho's voice came through the facility's speakers. All senior staff to the main briefing room. Priority 1 intelligence update. Sojin and Vextar made their way to what had once been the main lecture hall. The space had been reconfigured with advanced holographic projectors and communication equipment. Representatives from dozens of species filled seats that had once been used only for Academy students. Dean Korthova stood at the central podium, his massive Centaurian frame commanding attention from the mixed audience. We have received confirmation of the first void swarm contact with inhabited systems. The holographic displays activated, showing sensor data from the outer galaxy regions. Dark shapes moved between stars, consuming everything in their path. The images were disturbing but not unexpected. The Kepler sector stations detected the leading edge of their advance 3 days ago. Korthva continued. Based on current movement patterns, they will reach the inner galaxy regions within 8 months. Concerned voices filled the hall as representatives calculated how much time their home systems had before the threat arrived. However, the dean continued, our new alliance has produced some encouraging developments. Dr. Hai-Rin Nam took the podium, her role as a human intelligence officer now openly acknowledged. Combined human and Altarian deep space sensors have mapped the swarm's approach routes with unprecedented accuracy. We know exactly where they are going and when they will arrive. New displays showed predicted attack paths and timing estimates. The precision was remarkable compared to previous intelligence reports. Furthermore, she continued, Nexary stealth technology combined with human infiltration techniques has allowed us to place monitoring equipment directly in the swarm's path. We are gathering real-time intelligence on their capabilities and weaknesses. Captain Minho joined her at the podium. Joint training exercises between human special forces and Korvaxi warriors have produced new tactical approaches that neither species could have developed alone. The cooperation that had seemed impossible just weeks earlier was producing results that surprised everyone involved. But the most significant development, Sojin said, taking her turn at the podium, is not technological or tactical. It is psychological. She activated a new set of displays showing communication intercepts and behavioral analysis data. The Machine Collective and Deep Hunters have been monitoring galactic communications for decades. Their attack strategies were based on the assumption that galactic species would respond to threats individually, competing for resources and blaming each other for failures. The audience listened intently as the implications became clear. Our sudden alliance has forced them to completely recalculate their approach. They expected to face dozens of separate feuding species. Instead, they are now confronting a unified defense network. A young Nexari officer raised her hand. Colonel, are you saying that the threat level has actually decreased because of our cooperation? I am saying that our capabilities have increased far more than the sum of our individual strengths, Sojin replied. When species work together instead of against each other, the results are exponential rather than additive. Vextar found himself nodding in agreement. The Academy's research had always focused on individual species capabilities. No one had seriously studied what might happen if those capabilities were combined instead of compared. There is one more thing, Sojin said, her tone becoming more serious. We have discovered why these ancient threats are stirring now after centuries of dormancy. The hall fell completely silent. Everyone had wondered what had awakened such powerful forces at the same time. They were not sleeping, she continued. They were waiting. New images appeared showing deep space archaeological sites and ancient ruins on dead worlds. These threats have been watching galactic development for thousands of years, waiting for species to reach a certain level of technological and social advancement, the level where they become worth harvesting. The revelation was chilling. The galaxy's progress toward civilization had been monitored by predators who saw advancement as ripening fruit. But there is something they did not anticipate, Sojin said, her voice carrying new confidence. They expected individual species to reach harvesting potential. They did not plan for those species to unite and share their capabilities. She gestured toward the mixed audience of humans and aliens working together in ways that had never been attempted before. We are no longer individual species reaching maturity separately. We have become something entirely new, a galactic civilization. The words resonated through the hall as representatives realized the magnitude of what they were building together. The threats approaching us are ancient and powerful, Sojin continued, but they are also predictable. They have used the same strategies for millennia because those strategies always worked against divided targets. She paused, letting the implications sink in. Now they face united targets for the first time in their existence. They are about to discover that everything they think they know about galactic warfare is as outdated as everything you thought you knew about human capabilities. Applause erupted throughout the hall, not the polite acknowledgement typically given to academic lectures, but the genuine enthusiasm of beings who suddenly saw hope in what had seemed like an impossible situation. As the meeting concluded and representatives dispersed to their various duties, Vextar remained behind with Sojin. The lecture hall was empty except for the holographic display still showing Alliance coordination data. Colonel, he said thoughtfully, I have one final question about your infiltration operation. Ask away, Commander. How many other facilities have human operatives embedded in their systems? Sojin's smile was enigmatic. Commander, that would be telling. As she walked toward the exit, Vexitar called after her. The most dangerous humans are still the ones we never see coming, aren't they? She paused at the doorway and looked back. The most dangerous humans, Commander, are the ones fighting on your side that you still don't know about. With that, she disappeared into the corridor, leaving Vexitar alone with his thoughts and the growing realization that the galaxy's understanding of human capabilities had only just begun. Outside the windows of the lecture hall, ships from dozens of species worked together to construct the largest defensive network in galactic history.